I'm Dr. Lena Luck, and today in our What to Know Wednesday video, we're going to talk all about equitation position. And so, as you can see here, we have a rider, and we're going to go through some different things you can do to have correct position. But the first thing I want to mention is that riding English and equitation specifically is looking at the rider and the rider's position and how well they handle and manage their horse. But then English riding was originally developed for cantering across a field and jumping over jumps. And so everything you do riding English was intended that eventually you would jump. And so we're going to talk about position that eventually would get you to that, but then also is correct position functionally for being able to jump, even if all you're doing is hunting equitation in a breed show or 4-H show where you're going to do a pattern. You still want to be functional and correct so you can be good and efficient in your pattern. So the first thing is similar to our Western. We want to have that nice straight line that's going to run through kind of your ear, your head, your shoulder, your hip, and then down to your heel of your boot. And so that's ideally where you want to be. And then you also, with your hands, you want to have your hands about 6 inches apart, and you want to ideally be able to draw a line going from your elbow through your hand and a straight line to your horse's mouth in their bit. And so you can see her thumbs are up, but at the same time they're not bent like this. I see this a lot. That's pretty typical that people break their wrist this way. And ideally you want them to have that nice smooth line down to your horse. And then one other thing that I see a lot when we're talking about that equitation position or things that people do on a regular basis is one, they ride with too long a reins. So this, if you're doing equitation and you're doing a pattern, or if you're doing equitation over fences, or even just a rail class on more of the hunter jumper circuit with equitation, you want to have feel of your horse. I mean, you're not going to ride with such tight reins that your horse is in at the pole and looks intimidated, but you want to have a nice contact with your horse's mouth. So you can see here, she has a nice straight line, they're not loopy, but they're also not so tight that she's pulling on her horse's mouth. So a nice snug rein where she has feel, she can tell her horse to turn, she can tell her horse to stop. So anything that might be in a pattern or in a jumping class, she can communicate that with her horse. The next thing I see a lot is going to be with the length of your stirrup. So in English, ideally you want the stirrup, if you take it off, that it should hit about at your ankle bone. So you can see her ankle bone's right here, and then there's her stirrup. And so that's ideally where you want it to hit. I will say functionality, depending on what you're doing, it may be slightly shorter, slightly longer. So if you ride dressage, it's going to be longer than that. If you're jumping, you may want it slightly shorter so that you have a little more feel, especially if you have a smaller horse and you have a longer leg, you may want a slightly shorter stirrup so you can wrap your legs right around them. So make sure you have a good length to your stirrups. Too long of stirrups, you're not going to have good contact. And when you're riding English, if you think about you're going to eventually be going to a jump where you have to stand up in the saddle, if your stirrups are too long, it's really difficult to get up and out of the saddle and move with your horse and have a good function. So some things you can do if you need help getting in that correct position or finding that correct position for you is one thing I recommend is to stand up in the saddle. So you're going to stand up, and this just is where you would want to be if you're jumping, but this also in English we call it a 2-point position. You would move your hands slightly forward with the 2-point position, but we're just standing here to work on our position. So then when you're standing, when you sit down, so if you're riding Western, you would kind of sit down and sit on your butt. Whereas in English, when you sit down, you want to sit down straight and on your seat bones towards the front rather than rolling back to the back seat bones, I guess. So we'll have her sit and see how she just sat down nice and softly, straight down, and it puts you sitting on your seat bones correctly for English. And then you want to pull your shoulders nice and back so they're open so that you can guide your horse and tell them where you want them to go. And then this helps you get into that nice position if you stand up and then fall. And then you just want to make sure when you do this that you don't kick your leg out in front of you, because that's not going to feel good, it's not going to be correct. But then you also, I see a lot of times that we end up with our legs back here when we're trying to tell your horse different things. So keeping it nice where your heel is falling, kind of right under that hip bone is ideally where you want to be. So hopefully this gave you some good ideas of things to think about with your position. If you have any questions or want more advice, please put a comment. I have lots of little techniques or things that we can do to help you if you have some different issues, so feel free to comment. Thank you.